Welcome to ConnectPay's online payroll software demo. We'll start by visiting ConnectPayUSA.com. Click the green login button on the top of the screen and pull down the menu to select Payroll at the top. For this demo, I'm using our Payroll demo account. This will lead you to the portal login screen. If you're a multi-client user, you'd have a list of clients here to choose from. If you only have one client with us, it will open up to this page. Over on the left, all the hyperlinks are active. So if you enter in a new employee, click New Employee. You would fill in first name, middle name, last name, social security, address, divisions, and departments. This would all be set up for your company. The pay frequency, you can have multiple pay frequencies. You would choose the one that the employee was paid on. Salary would be per pay period amount. Regular is the hourly rate that they were hired at. The new hire box is always checked because we do new hire reporting for you. You put in the hire date, the gender. If you have an employee that is here on a visa from another country, you would check this box and reach out to your client service representative so that the taxes were done appropriately. Further down the page, if you had a 1099, you could pay that 1099 through payroll. We're going to assume this employee is a W-2. That's what the default is. This client is set up in multiple states. So if you are also set up in multiple states, you would choose the state that the employee is working and living in. You would pick the filing status based on their W-4 form, whether or not they're married or single, and any exemptions. These tax exemptions are associated with a visa status, so they're grayed out for you. Your CSR would have to do that locally. And then you would save your changes, and that employee would be available to be paid when you go into the pay grid. We recommend that all changes are done prior to going into the pay grid. That way, when you go into the pay grid, all you're doing is payroll. So edit employee. If you had an employee that, say, moved, you would click on that employee and you would change their street, city, state, and zip code. So I'll move him to 250 Main Street. You save your changes and that becomes effective immediately. Edit earnings. If an employee gets a raise, you would just click on the edit box next to salary. You would add a new rate amount. I wouldn't write over the amount because then the history goes away, and I think history is important in payroll. So you would enter in the new rate. That also becomes effective immediately. Edit deductions is the same thing. So this person got a raise. Now he wants to increase his 401k. So we're going to edit the 401k. And we're going to add a new rate. And the new rate always defaults to the bottom of the screen. And then you save it, and that becomes effective immediately. All of these earnings and deductions are set up for your client based on the paperwork that we receive from the salesperson or what you have set up for your company. Edit direct deposit. If you have an employee who wants to closes a bank account and lets you know, you would just click edit. You would disable the direct deposit and it stops effective immediately and save the changes. There is a delete button out here. I don't like deleting payroll. I think you should just disable it, and that way when the employee comes back to you and asks you what their old bank account was, you can see the history. If you needed to add a new direct deposit, over on the left you would click New Direct Deposit. You would put in the transit number from the bank, click check, and the bank will come up. They can have as many direct deposits as they want for the same fee. And then you save your changes, and that direct deposit becomes effective immediately as well. Edit HR information. This is where dates of birth, title, race, and occupation, if you kept track of that for your client, or for your employees rather, full-time, part-time, their employee email. becomes important because that's how they get invited to view their pay stubs online. They can also be invited with a mobile phone number. If you had that for them, you could put that information in here as well. Benefit information is for ACA reporting, so that's not typically applicable. And the AK geographic code is Alaska, which probably also is not applicable. And then save your changes. If you have labor allocation, if you have employees that their labor is allocated between 2 different departments and it's permanent, you could do that here under Edit Labor Allocation. So you would add a new allocation row and you could do 50% to one department and 50 to the next. And that would just happen automatically in each payroll until you changed it. Time off, if you accrue PTO within the payroll software and not in a time clock system, that we can program as well. In payroll, you'd give the information to your client service representative. They would set it up on the base application and you could add or take off people that are in certain plans. So this employee participates here. If they switched to a different plan, you would just check the box to make the check mark go away, put them in a different plan, and that accrual would start effective immediately. Once you make all your changes and you're ready to go into payroll, you click Enter a Payroll. Your dates will be appropriate to your next payroll cycle. You go into the pay entry grid. All of your employees will show up. 15 show up on a page. So if you have under that, it's 1 page. If you have more than that, it's 2. You have to calculate each page as you go. What I recommend if you have a lot of hourly employees is I would click Select All, and then I would uncheck the boxes of the employees that aren't working this week, and I would enter in the hours for the employees that are. And all I'm doing here is arrowing down between the boxes. Once you have all the hours input, you click Calculate Selected Pay Lines. If you had a PTO plan set up and you had an employee that wasn't assigned to one, you'll get an error message here. If you have a PTO plan and somebody is negative, that message will also show up here. You can just click OK. They're just warning messages. They don't stop your payroll process. Once that all looks fine, you go to your next page and you have your next set of people. Again, select all, enter in your hours. Calculate your pay lines. Oh, I misentered her. I gave her 400 hours instead of 40. You'll get an error message if you exceed a standard hour time frame for a payroll, which is a good double check on whether or not you keyed it correctly. Once all of your employees are green, those are the ones that are getting paid. So over on the left-hand side over here, you would click View Approved Payroll Totals. This will give you your total by earning code and also by deduction. So the total salary is $8,400, regular, overtime. This gives your whole list of taxes for this specific payroll, and then your total deductions. If you wanted to see the payroll before you submit it, you would click Pre-Process Report, Generate Report, and it takes a minute to do the calculation of the gross to net. But this is basically a pre-journal so that you can check. I recommend people do this if they make a bunch of changes in the same payroll. That way you can make sure that what's going to arrive on payroll day is what you expect it to look like. And this basically gives you the gross to net. And you can scroll down through this. I'm just pressing the arrow down button and you can look to see that, okay, yes, I did give Jeff Alligator a raise. Maybe. And his 401k changed. Once you go through the whole list and you're sure that everybody is getting paid that should be getting paid, you'd return to payroll. And from here, you can approve the payroll. When you hit the approve payroll button, it's gone, it comes to us, we batch print, so your reports will show up in about 15 or 20 minutes. There's also an option on that screen to hold your payroll or to cancel your payroll. You can hold your payroll if you're in the middle of it and you get an email from somebody that says, hold off, I think Susie wants to change her exemptions. You can put the payroll on hold and fix that and address the email. If you got to the end of the payroll and you realized that I forgot to make all of my medical deduction changes at that time, you can cancel the payroll and you can go in and make all your changes and go back to your pay grid. Once you hit approve payroll, it's pretty much done. This information here, your payroll debit is your net checks, your tax filing debit is your taxes, employee and employer, your billing debit is your billing debit, and then your total debit. This payroll approval confirmation gets emailed to any contact that is on your company that has access to it. You can pick and choose who you want to get this via email. If you have a bookkeeper or CPA or somebody that manages your bank account, maybe you don't want it, maybe they do. You can make those, you can do all that and set up with your CSR when you first submit the payroll data. Over on the left under reports, you can look at everybody's pay stub history. So if you had an employee that for some reason couldn't get in and access their pay stub and they needed to go to the bank because they were getting a loan today and they didn't want to, figure out how to log in, they had never done it before, you can generate that pay stub for them right here. Click the box next to their name, you create your pay stub. It does open up in a new window, so your pop-ups should be off. And from here, you can just right click on it and save it like you would any PDF. You can print it, save it, share it. And this basically gives their breakdown, gross to net, their address, the date of the check, the period begin, end, their net pay, just like any other pay stub that they would have. Their year-to-date hours, year-to-date earnings, their current amount, their bank account information. All but the last four are masked. The employee taxes, and any deductions that they have. Under payroll history, this saves all the history from when you come onto our service. And again, it gives you a nice note that you need to make sure your pop-ups are off. So your payroll summary is just that. It gives the total, basically the gross to net for the whole company. If you have departments, it is split out by department, but the first page is the whole company. So this gives your total gross salary, your total regular hours, all of the deductions that are on your company, the debit of the checks and the direct deposits, and it gives a total debit of the net here. In your tax buckets, the current taxable wage, the rate becomes important as rates change for unemployment taxes. It's important that you scan that and look at it to make sure that it's correct so that we're collecting at the correct rate. You have employer and employee taxes. We debit all of the taxes, and that gives you a total tax debit to the right. Also lists your payroll fees, which is a debit as well. And then it will give you a total debit amount and the total cost of payroll. The total debit amount and the total cost of payroll differ by the client responsibility. The client responsibility is basically 401k money that you might move yourself, medical deductions, AFLAC, any deductions that you take from your employees that you would make the payment to the vendor on their behalf. Your payroll journal is the pre-process report that you looked at prior to submitting your payroll. It's just the finalized version of that. It gives the employees gross to net, current, and year-to-date. Tells you whether or not it was deposited or whether it was a live check. The time off report. The time off report shows who is in a plan. It also shows who's not in a plan. and it gives their banked hours, how many hours they used and how many they have remaining. It does show the hourly rate on here, which I point out because if you were to have somebody come into your office and want to know when you brought the report out, depending on who can see rates, that's something that I would keep secure. Labor summary report, if you distribute labor on your payroll for your books. This is a nice report in that it gives the total department, current payroll, month, quarter, and year-to-date gross wages. It gives all the taxes, employee and employer at the same frequencies. It gives the deductions, and then over to the right-hand side, it gives you your total job cost, current month, quarter, and year-to-date. So it gives that by department, and then it will give you a total cost of your payroll for your whole company on one report, which is nice. The labor detail report shows how the labor was allocated in that one specific payroll. So it shows Jeff Alligator's 50-50 to each department. And it shows that this Eric Boston, even though he's hourly, he's also 50-50. It would show any distribution of labor that you did in the payroll. An investment data worksheet, if you needed to send information to your 401k, you just download it, downloads into a CSV file. You could either open it or save it and send it to the appropriate parties. Your quarterly reports are all out here as well. They usually appear the second week of the first month of the new quarter. They stay out forever at this moment. Your W-2s are in the fourth quarter of each year. So if your employees can also see those online. So if you needed to get something, if your employee lost their W-2, you could always print it for them instead of asking us for a new copy. There's a few on-demand reports. If you were in a workers' comp audit situation, you could select, we typically recommend the employee payroll totals report because that gives you a date range report for your whole company. So say your workers' comp audit went from 10/24/2018 to 10/24 or 10/23/2019. You could run that report and you could save it and send it to your workers' comp vendor along with your quarterlies that would be over here under your quarterly returns. In this report, you could also right-click on it and save it, or you could print it or save it up here onto your desktop. Save it as a PDF, and you could open it or save it, whatever you chose to do with it. Affordable Care Act. We have a large employer testing tool. We do the 1094s and the 1095s. We don't do them locally anymore. We outsource those. So if you did need ACA reporting, you'd let your salesperson or your client service representative know that, and we would get you in touch with our ACA partner for that. Manage user access over here on the left is for inviting your employees to view their pay stubs. Anybody that has an email address or a mobile number, you can just add them here. And save the changes. Once you have all the email addresses in the system, you have some options up here. You could invite users. The only people that are going to show in the invite users are people that don't currently have access. So you would select all and invite them. They get an email. They click on the welcome in the email. They answer 3 specific questions of themselves. Typically, it's the first 5 of your social. It could be your zip code. It could be your whole bank account number. It's more secure than just the last 4 digits of your social or your bank account. You could view who was invited so that you know who was invited and isn't logging in if they keep asking you for their pay stubs. If you have an employee who's locked out, you can unlock them on here as well. And that's basically it.